Hey, can you close that door?
All right, good afternoon, everybody. We are live with this week's SKTLs volunteer/founder call. Maybe we'll call it that now, since I was corrected last week by Cody. Joined by Cody Willard. Joe's down there. Dan Geraci's here, and my dog right here. So there we go. And Bryce in the background, I guess.
What's the dog's name?
Cameron.
Cameron, that's a good boy. Oh, yeah. That's a good boy, Cameron.
So, but yeah, what's going on?
Let's do crypto. We've got the website being updated. I promise we've got it. I've got the page built. It didn't publish when I tried to do it. It'll be up there by tonight. We've continued to plug along with partnerships and moving, meeting with various Space Force, SpaceWorks entities. We'll hop back into this stuff in a moment. We've been enjoying lately when Dan does a little bit of update us on some.
It'll go this way, or you can.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
So Dan,
talk to us. What's the latest on? Did we have any successful space launches in the last week that we can actually be excited about?
Hey, Rocket Labs.
There were 2 unsuccessful space attempts.
Rocket Labs just launched at Wallops near my place yesterday, and I actually, since I'm not there, I'm in the middle of America. I actually pointed the security camera to the direction, and I saw it go up. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, no, they launched their first Electron rocket from Virginia, so they're pretty happy. Some other things, a lot of testing going on. There's other stuff being booked. SpaceX finished its wet dress rehearsal of Starship, so they're getting closer to launching that sucker and getting it up there for the first time for a little run.
Dan, can you tell us the difference between how big that Starship is, how big the Electron rocket or is it the Neutron rocket that Rocket Lab, say the right name for us when you get there, and then what is Rocket Lab like? Just sort of walk us through the variety of sizes and the companies that can deliver those payloads.
Starship is 400 or something feet tall. It's taller than the Saturn V. It's taller than Artemis. So it is it should be called Starship. I mean, it's that big. I don't have the size on.
I think I saw where Electron is only 60 feet.
Okay, yeah, and I was going to say probably high 40s, but yeah, a lot of these rockets from a lot of these companies that you hear about kind of in that same bandwidth are in that range, 40 to 60 feet, where they're, they've got, as I said, I think once before, they've got relatively small or finite payloads, 1 or 2 customers. Maybe they can do a ride share if they're CubeSats or something, but they're not big beasts. These are, get them up there quickly and repeatedly, much more in line with what the government and DoD wants with this rapid replacement program of, if their small sats, CubeSats get knocked out and put a hole in the net of a constellation, they can get a replacement up within 24 hours or less. So that's what those kind of, pickup trucks, if you will, or what you might consider these smaller rockets. They're not going to carry a lot, but they're really good for the use they're intended.
So, Dan, is there enough demand? I mean, from the outside looking in, when I'm going to space events and or just studying this universities space programs that want to get rovers or satellites out to Saturn or on Mars, or want to get some, get something up into space that now they could do it for a reasonable enough price that they are considering doing these things. As the prices drop, it seems to me that there's an endless amount of demand, potential for applications and services and things for companies to provide by getting satellites and rockets and factories and things up into space. What do you have any idea, sort of like what the demand supply curve looks like? Is there more supply than demand, just a little bit below right here?
Well, but I mean, the big issue, and I think I sent you that blog post from the Space Fund.
Yes, it's great.
When you look at there's spacefund.com. Megan Crawford, the co-founder, wrote a great article on, don't start a launch company. There are other sectors that need investment. There's 166, I think she listed, or not listed, but said launch companies as an example. And she quotes, and I've seen this in numerous places, that there will be about 100,000 satellites launched in the next, 5 to 8 years. And be a bit of a hockey stick towards the back end, maybe 10 years. But when you look at that and you say, gee, that's a lot of satellites, but you look at these constellations that are going to have thousands of these sats in them, and then you look at not just low Earth orbit LEO, but there's MEO, right? Mid-Earth orbit, and then GEO, when you get further out in that geosynchronous orbit, where that is now becoming more of a sweet spot because of the versatility. It's further up. And so there's plenty of room. There are, and I've always said that there's, we're going to end up with around 20. We should have 25 launch companies. She said 30 yesterday, or when I read this, rather, yesterday. And so that tells you there's a vast oversupply, as we've said before, of launchers scrambling for market share.
How many of them have actually been in the air, though? How many of them have gotten?
Next to none. I mean, a handful. And a lot of these young rocket companies they've done all their testing. They've done hot fire tests where they, go to a test bed and they just strap raw engines down and fire them for X amount of time to make sure they actually work without blowing up or shutting down prematurely. So all kinds of testing is done, but flight heritage, as it's known, very few. Okay, I mean, we've seen countless companies that, they're on their third or fourth attempt and the suckers are blowing up and nothing's happening. So 2024 and 2025 look like there's a bubble in the number of launchers that are actually going to attempt to fly or have contracts to take up somebody's satellites. And it's a pretty, this is the high risk end of the market right now for launchers, because it's, I guess you'd have to go back and look at early airplanes or other things where, everybody knew what the technology was, and everybody knows what it takes to get a rocket off the ground and what kind of engineering it needs and all that stuff. It doesn't mean that they're all going to work. And so we're in that phase right now. But I think a lot get squeezed, they'll get acquired, they won't have the capital, there'll be only so much capital for launchers, and the big dogs are going to eat, and the small ones are going to starve, and they're going to have to either, merge, sell, or kiss it goodbye. So that's one end of the stick. There's going to be dramatic demand to launch, no doubt about it, because there's going to be a lot of satellites going up. There will be demand on locations for launch. That's a crimp right now, a pinch and there's a bottleneck there in the supply chain. And those are going to be coming on stream and catching up. And so, it's really, when you look at the big rockets, those are the deep exploration rockets. That's big Stu's working on big stuff. Of course, we have SpaceX, NASA's still in the game. And so
ULA.
crude exploration, CREW, crude exploration is going to drive the longer
As opposed to
distance
crude
stuff.
oil.
So schools that want to do satellite launches, yeah, as opposed to crude oil. The schools that have the big programs, like they win a NASA contract, like Arizona State with the Psyche mission as an example, those are NASA programs, and NASA gets them to launch on whatever is available, and they go do their thing. Smaller projects and this is a lot of universities around the world, want to put a satellite up, a CubeSat, and do some experimentation. They have to go buy a ride. Some of them in the US will get a ride on a DoD, Department of Defense launch, on an Atlas or something, where they can hitch a ride. Takes forever to get it done. They get delayed. It could be expensive. It's unreliable in terms of getting your project done before you graduate from school, versus other operations that are obviously always going up and can piggyback you on a ride, whether you're a payload inside or you're an external payload where your project is strapped to the outside of the rocket. That happens a lot. And then they just drop you off on the way. So
They call that hitchhiking.
yeah, something like that. So there's no shortage.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Joe.
There's a great one.
Hey, speaking of Dan, you'd been talking about Hollywood, and I saw today something came through Twitter about sending Tom Cruise up to film. Axiom Space has their inflatable film place. It's going to be 6 meters across, they said, and hook it onto the space station, and then when that gets decommissioned, move it over to the Axiom space station.
Gymnasium. So eventually, I want Axiom to have its own gymnasium so we can have outer space basketball on 30-foot hoops.
Well, the Axiom strategy is very different from the other space station strategies that NASA has given grants to, the other three. Axiom is to attach to ISS, as Joe said. So it's much more of we're not designing our own space station. We're designing a module that's going to be attached to ISS. That's what Axiom's doing, which can then be taken off, disconnected, to fly on its own with other components as well. But there's a lot of people now making a strong case for saying, wait a minute, time out. We'd like to repurpose parts of the space station. Hey, I'll take that old trailer and turn it into something.
Another man's treasure is another guy's trash.
It's already up there and it's built, and retrofitting certain parts of it or certain modules may not be a bad idea. And at the end of the day, you're going to have 4, if they all get off the ground and complete what NASA has given the money to do, and to raise the rest of the capital, you'll have 4 stations in orbit right off the bat. So, and many of them will have as much research and habitation space as the ISS has, just in very different configurations. There are these big cylindrical habitats, and they're basically designed, most of them, to fit inside of a starship, which is 10 meters in diameter or so, roughly.
Will we ever get to the point where we see these big units up there that you see in the movies, where you have the giant cylindrical things rotating around the core, so that it creates gravity, right?
Oh yeah, it's not that far off to be able to do that, and you start out with very small ones that could be that way. You just need thrusters on that ring that just keep it moving, and even if it gives you half a G, or maybe it gives you lunar gravity at an eighth, or 40%, 38% or so for Martian gravity, which, you know, in terms of going long distances, we're all looking at just a rocket that's going on a straight shot. But you could even have a capsule on a rocket that is partly disconnected that can rotate on the way out to get them used to the gravitational pull of Mars. There's so many different designs. There's also the tethered approach, which has been around for a long time. You just take, you know, your supplies that are sitting on one module with a tether that could be a kilometer or two long, attached to the command module where the astronauts are. And you just get it into a pinwheel rotation around that tether and just let it fly. You know, you don't have to worry about aerodynamics when you're in space. So, you know, it's a lot of these techniques have been around a while. One thing I'll mention before I turn it back over that I think is pretty cool that was in the news is the announcement that DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and NASA are now going to be openly, jointly working on the development of nuclear thermal propulsion. And bottom line is, you know, nuclear thermal propulsion, you know, you don't launch with those rockets. You go up with conventional liquid fuel rockets. You get into a safe orbit well enough above the atmosphere, then you light the reactor, and what it does is it heats the fuel, whatever it's going to be, that plasma, to basically create this super hot fuel that when it comes out of those nozzles at the back end gives you incredible speed. And some of the work that's been done has modeled out at about 120 plus thousand miles per hour, which would basically get you to Mars in a month.
In a month
So
instead of 6 months.
Instead of it taking 4, 5, 6, it takes you a month to get there. And suddenly now, because NASA wants this, and they've been directed by Congress to get the engines built and functioning so that they might be able to be used for the crewed missions in the late 2030s. So they want to see if they can use that, because if you can get there that much faster, then it's safer. It's a shorter trip. So there's safety there. People say, well, geez, it's nuclear. How is that safe? This form of nuclear, because it's low uranium, it's not the enriched, highly enriched, it's low enriched uranium that's used for these things. And there's a company that's called like Really Safe Nuclear, I think is the name of the company, something like that. This fuel, you can hold it in your hand and it won't do anything to you. Some of this fuel is cold. It doesn't become active until you light it, if you will. And so, but a month out and a month back, suddenly shorter trips, more importantly, frequent trips.
I mean, that changes the economics of visiting Mars.
That was going to be my
taking
point.
A year of travel to get there and back means you got to
We talked about access to space being the game changer that SpaceX brought by making it easier, cheaper, faster, and that all these companies now in the new space revolution are, you know, it's all about access to space. That's how we're going to have this economy. Well, take that economy issue and extend it all the way to Mars. So it won't be just a lunar economy. It'll be a Martian economy where, out and back, sure. You want to take a 3-month vacation?
It actually, it's not impossible.
Take a ride, hang out for a couple months. Maybe it's a longer ride back, but you've got a completely different approach. Yeah. And it also might allow for a rescue mission if something were to happen, because of the speed, being able to potentially in that orbit trajectory to get to there's a lot of options that this opens up. It is ultimately going to be the way we travel. regular fuel rockets are just going to be way too long. A 2 trip where you're spending a year on the surface because you have to, not because you want to, is what's there now.
Yeah,
you have to
the
wait
only
for
way you
the
can make
Earth
it reasonable.
and the moon to get back in the same position before you can come back. So that's something to pay attention to. There was a great article. I mean, you can look at this on Lockheed's site, on the NASA site. You could look at it. There was an article on it in Space News that featured today, a cover article on spacenews.com. It's a really cool approach, and I think that's going to be they haven't talked about it much. This is 1960s technology, by the way.
So much of
we
this
had this stuff around. They did the first experiments in the early 70s. Yeah.
Cabana Crypto,
Like,
your
what
dog
have
is
we
too
been
cute
doing
for
the last few years? Right?
Cameron. Hey, Cameron. Oh, that's a good boy. Can you get Cameron to raise his head?
Cameron.
Hey, good boy. That's a good boy.
He's like, I don't know who you are. Don't bother me.
Joe, are you taking over leadership of SKTLs and taking us to the next level, organizing the cats and getting us herded to...
No pressure on a call like this.
I'm not a fan of cats. I'll tell you that.
I'm allergic.
I am still pondering.
All right.
Yeah.
That's why you got on here all anxious today. I was like, Joe is in, handing over the reins. Cabana, you going to take over SKTLs and help us out? You have Cameron as our mascot.
Yeah, send him to space.
Oh man, you're not sending that doggy to space. You can't be without him.
No,
he's not going to space unless you're going to space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Don't count me out, but I need to. Yeah, there's a lot of other things going on as you have things going on. So,
yeah. Well, and look, truly, guys, we're doing these on YouTube now, so there's only 4 of us in the panel. I think we could have up to 8 or something on here, but we need to organize the cats who are actually the active volunteers so that we can all sort of be on here like we used to and be able to discuss things with each other and be a little, just make it all flow better.
We can have 10. So.
What's that?
So we can have 10.
10.
Yeah.
So Joe, can you put in Slack? Cabana, can you get us the link for the call earlier?
Yeah.
Like tonight. And then Joe, let's start reminding all of our cats, to our volunteers, that, hey, show up here on this link. I'm going to make sure nobody's actually in our old Zoom link as we're talking.
Yeah, I've seen a couple people hop in the green room, but they can't get connected. So it's
all right.
Just a technical.
Well, we'll try to get this a little more organized with the whole volunteer team. Of course, I want to have Daniel on here so we can bounce things off of him. Where's Sanatsi today? I don't know. But we need to, I've got to get that page published, and then we will start taking submissions. I'll send that link out tonight too. I think I'm going to get it up, and then we'll, we built our website with volunteer power, and we probably should have just done it on Shopify, because I've now built an alternative website for us on Shopify.com where you can buy SKTLs gear very easily on the site. Hey, Sanatsi. Hi. We got you the wrong link. You got to be on the SteamYard link, not the YouTube link. So you can be here with us.
You're on a live stream, not a live Steam.
Thank you. Well played.
Sure.
Right, Cameron?
Plenty of hot air.
We paid out the dividend. I collected mine on over at, if you guys haven't done it, you go to the browser inside your MetaMask, go to app.sktls.com and connect your wallet, and then you have to pay a small, like 20 cents worth of gas fee to get it done or something. But I've now collected, we've been doing these. Hey, Sanatsi, there you are. Lumberjack man today.
Yeah.
Or you can make a purchase. You can make a purchase. You can buy some more, and it'll automatically pull those over from the site. So you don't have to do it separately. It'll do it all together if you want to buy some more.
So, and in order to buy some, guys, we haven't talked about this in a while. SKTLs, we let the free market place it on whatever exchanges wanted to have people trading it. It's on Pancake Swap and about 3 other exchanges. You have to, we're not paying any of these exchanges to list us or anything like that. We believe that if this thing can clean up space debris, there's a reason for it to have value and for eventually Coinbase to list it. And we've believed that from the beginning. We don't think that's this month or this year even, but you know, this thing, have you guys looked at a SKTLs chart lately? Come on, let's look at the chart.
Cody, what's a typical timeline for a new crypto to come out and then start to get a little traction and then get put onto a Coinbase? I mean, is it
I don't think there's ever been one that didn't pay for it.
I
don't think you can get on. I don't think I bet there's, out of the 15 or 20,000 tokens that are listed on Coinbase, I would bet if, you know, some of them have paid to be on exchanges, some of them have been paid to be on, not necessarily Coinbase. You don't pay. I'm sorry. I was thinking of coinmarket.com, CoinMarketCap. Coinbase itself, what are there? Probably 100 or something, 200 tokens. Anybody know? Bryce, do you know? It doesn't have that many. The only way you get on Coinbase is to become a mainstream enough that there's demand for you, I'm pretty sure. You can pay to get on coinmarketcap.com. I had a brain cross of wiring when you asked about Coinbase. To get on Coinbase, you got to pretty much hit critical mass. You need to be $1 billion token. That's not fraudulent, silly, or stupid. And there's still, I was just asked on the Train with Cody chat today about a token called Debtbox, DEBTBOX. I shouldn't have spelled it for you because I don't want you guys to go look it up. Like, it looks silly to me. Like, I couldn't find a white paper, couldn't find how many founders tokens are. CoinMarketCap itself lists it, but doesn't know how many, what the actual market cap is, except for maybe the fully dilute. Like, that's the type of stuff we don't want to mess with. Here's our chart. Go as long term as possible. Nomics. To go SKTL and Nomics. Just Google it.
Oh, my bad. I didn't go back.
Oh, yeah, there you go. This will go out. All right, so there's our chart since we launched. I don't know about you guys, but that's the best looking chart in crypto when every other crypto on the planet's down 60 to 99%. Not only that, look, you can tell there's no silliness going on, right? Like, there are no founders tokens to rug pull people with anyway, but that thing, like, that's just, there's people that are slowly accumulating some of this because we're talking about space debris cleaning up and how this could help with it.
Well, the stability of the trading range is something that is probably one of the more encouraging factors. We
got to have the lowest beta of any crypto on the planet, if I had to bet. Mr. Joe Waldman.
The primary reason that the SEC refused to recognize crypto for so long, it was because of stability.
Yeah.
And the whole volatility of the currencies. And so they wouldn't.
You're less cynical about the reasons than I am, but that was probably part of the reason, Dan.
Well,
I think anytime the SEC is involved, I'm cynical.
Well,
where is the SEC right now with this debt box thing? Like, they'll show the debt box, according to CoinMarketCap, still has a $1.5 billion market cap. And it's like, it's silly. It'll be at zero at some point, and then the SEC will show up and they'll be like, hey, we helped save you guys. You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, they're good Monday morning quarterbacks, that's for sure. But the stuff I was mentioning, I was working with a friend of mine who was getting ready to start crypto a few years ago. And we were having meetings with his lawyers and SEC lawyers on several calls talking about, was this going to, what are we going to need to do? And they were just adamant that they weren't going to bless anything for a long time because they just didn't have enough confidence, and they didn't want to be the ones to say, sure, it's okay, and then have something blow up. I mean,
But instead, they didn't say anything was okay. So
well,
it all
no,
went
that's the infamous SEC no action.
Ask Elon Musk
response.
about that term.
They
Don't
don't
become.
comment.
Let's not
which
attack
tells
the
you, go
SEC
ahead.
after all.
Yeah, they don't say no. They just don't say anything. And then you go ahead and then they'll go to school on you. Well, it blew up. Okay, now we have an opinion. That's
Makes me think of that song,
unfortunately how
Don't
it
Get
works
Mad,
with a
Get
lot of
Even.
new securities.
Don't get mad.
In
Get
there, got those
even.
t-shirts.
I guess the only thing I would bring up is what could ruin this beautiful chart is if someone, was given a ton of tokens and then they could just nuke the price. So that's.
Well, let's do the math. Actually, it's a good point because at some point after Space Day in the first week of May, when the fund itself awards 5 different entities, basically about 10 million tokens total, there'll be 5 different entities that have 2 million tokens each. I would assume that not all of them are going to go blow out of every one of the tokens they've got the first day. But Cabana, you know what? Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's the transparency and believing that this is going to help clean up space debris and can create some wealth for early space believers and investors in this token. Not even investors. I'd hate to call it an investment. I mean, you're trying to clean up space. In some sense, you're trying to do the right thing, and hopefully there's a profit motive that pays off in the end. I don't know. I hope that if they do crush it, if someone gets 2 million tokens and blows out of it, I bet that token's dropping in half or so. That means they would take 2 million times an average of 1.5 cents. They'd have $30,000 of money on their checking account that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to spend figuring out how to clean up space debris. But that's what we created the token for. So we're going to do it, and we're going to.
It's a self-fulfilling.
What's
a
that?
Self-fulfilling prophecy. If it gets the attention of somebody who wants to, abuse it by doing whatever they want that they would like to do to a currency, then I think that can easily happen. I think that comes with visibility.
It's
not as visible.
The people that we were the governments or the countries, the university, the company, or the student who receives those 2 million tokens is not a nefarious player. They're going to come through. I know. But I want to get it all out for everybody to understand so that we're being explicit about what happens here. Like the five entities that are awarded those 2 million tokens are going to be space debris cleaning enthusiasts. So it's not like, I'm pretty sure most of those guys are not going to blow out of it. They're going to be like,
I don't mean them.
I've got a crypto that could be worth millions of dollars someday. And right now it's in, I've got the early adoption of it. I'm hoping that's how it plays out. Cabana, does that answer your concern as best as possible?
That is the hope. Absolutely. I wouldn't say concern. I mean, if you want to buy, set some bids in at that point and, do a Hail Mary and maybe you get lucky and just, you catch him with your net.
Look, and if you're going to do something like that, you would want to do it at various points so that you're not putting your eggs in the basket at the same level on the same day or something. Mm-hmm. But you see down there when we first launched from the June to July level, when that thing just absolutely got, people who received the free airdrop blew out of it. No, leave it there. That red line stuff. Yeah. Those people received somewhere, the first day it was trading at 2 pennies. So if you received 35,000 free tokens on the airdrop because you registered for it, you had $7,000. Is that right? 35,000 times 2 cents, $700. You had $700 for free. And there were, I'm sure, hundreds of people who sold that, some of whom paid the rent with that money, some of whom fed children with that money. And that's great. But the point I'm trying to get to is I had bids exactly as I'm describing. When it launched, I got 35,000 on the airdrop, and then I had bids in at a penny, at half a penny, and at a tenth of a penny. And I got filled on all of them because it went through them as those people blew out of them. That very well might happen again in May. And frankly, as you're talking about it, I'll have a bid in there at half a penny. So it probably won't go much lower than that because there'll be people like me doing it.
Yep.
It's a free market, and that's where the value has to be. You know, the difference between cryptos and a stock and equity is you got cash flows to support your equity and your bond. You got assets, you got buildings, you got all kinds of stuff. In crypto, especially as these ones are designed, and almost all of them are designed, it is a critical mass that has to be built. And if it is over time an established value, it would be because of the things that, like Dan has described in the past, that there will be a de facto clearing currency like the petrodollar. That will be what is cleared. These commodities are cleared as they go in and out of outer space and the space economy. And maybe it will be the dollar. Maybe it'll be Bitcoin. Why wouldn't it be a space debris cleaning cryptocurrency that helps solve and make space happen as you're clearing all of that? That is, if that happens, there's fundamental value in this that is not just, even though it's not an asset or something or cash flow underneath it, there's fundamental value that this token is being used to clear assets that do have fundamental value. Peace, love, happiness. Any questions or comments? So let's get out of here. I'd like to introduce our new CEO, Joe Waldman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, you're bad.
Joe, hello. Hello. Is this thing working? Joe, Mr. Waldman.
I'll go back on YouTube.
Joe just fired you.
What about the trading volume of Skittles? Thanks for being here, B-Hop. I appreciate anybody asking questions too. There is volume. I mean, that I've seen days where there's $5,000 or $10,000 of Skittles volume. I think on an average day there's a few $100s. So, like we were saying, if someone went in and tried to sell $30,000 worth of tokens at this price, there's not enough liquidity that it would handle that. But you could sell, $500, $1,000, or $1,500 without bumping the price much at all.
The interesting thing is that when you try to sell too many tokens, you get penalized badly. Anytime you try, and I just check it. If you try to sell more than about 20,000 tokens, the slippage skyrockets, and instead of being 2%, you lose 10% of your equity in it when you're selling.
And what you're describing, Joe, confirm that I know what you're talking about here. It's like when you go into MetaMask and you go into the browser and you type in PancakeSwapFinance.com or whatever that website is. Please don't type that in case it's not the actual perfect one that I just said. But you go to PancakeSwap inside the browser, and then it's like, and by the way, it warns you even then. It's like, make sure you got the right URL right now, because people, if you got the wrong one, you could get screwed. And so you get that right URL browser, and then if you're like, hey, I want to sell, I've got 1 million tokens in one of my wallets. If I went and I'm like, hey, I'm going to sell 100,000 tokens, it would say, okay, but you realize you're going to move the token down like at least 15%. Probably you're not going to want to do that. And it gives you a warning. And then you would say, no, I better not do that. I better only sell $500 worth or something.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. It's just that instead of when you sell, you get 98% of the value of what you're trying to sell because of fees and whatnot. You're only going to get 90% of what you try and sell because the volume's too high. So it penalizes you for trying to sell too much. So you can either take the penalty up front, or you can sell 20,000 tokens worth
slowly.
15 times in
that's-
a row.
That's frankly
Either way,
how
you're
most of the tokens, like that's how, I had those tokens. It took the first batch, it took 2 or 3 weeks to be filled as those people blew out of tokens. And then in the time since, I still have had bids under there under a penny. And there's times when, bam, it gets filled, but you never know. But that is it, right? Like if someone goes blowing out of them, if you've got bids underneath, you get the benefit. So if the token ever goes back up, again, guys, by the way, SKTLs, like every crypto, it's very risky. Unlike all the other cryptos, it's not a security. Bitcoin and SKTLs, only ones with no founder tokens. No exchange of value when we did the airdrop. I drink all my water. Cameron, let's go, Cameron. We're off the phone. Let's go walk. Good boy. Come on, Cameron. Bye, everybody. See you next week, 4:00 p.m. Eastern. Bye, Cameron. Space dog. Space dog.